I'll be staying here from now on. Get used to it. I nearly dropped my purse. Lorraine's voice cut through the air like a bad joke fallen flat. What? Since when? Kevin stood to the side, shifting on his feet, avoiding my eyes. He tried to muster a weak smile. Mom needed a place, Elena. She'll stay with us for a while. I could feel my blood boiling. A place? Kevin, we didn't discuss this. Lorraine rolled her eyes, a smirk flickering across her face. There's no need to raise your voice. It's family business. I glanced at Kevin, searching for some sign of solidarity. He simply shrugged, looking anywhere but at me. She doesn't have anywhere else to go, he muttered. Anger rose in my chest. So you just decide this without asking me? Kevin sighed, walking past me to grab a can of soda from the kitchen. Look, let's not make this a huge deal, okay? It's temporary. Lorraine settled herself on the couch, flipping through a magazine like she owned the place. I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to scream. Temporary? And how long is temporary exactly? Kevin opened the soda, taking a sip. We'll figure it out. She's family, Elena. I turned away, fighting the tears that threatened to spill. Nothing about this felt right. The house I had worked so hard to make our home was now invaded without a second thought. I glanced back at Kevin, hoping for a glimmer of understanding. Kevin, I need to talk to you, alone. He finally looked at me, his face a mix of annoyance and fatigue. Fine, he said, putting down his drink. Let's talk. We walked to the backyard, where the evening air did little to cool my anger. You can't just bring her here without any discussion, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Kevin rubbed the back of his neck. Elena, it's not that simple. She's my mother. I didn't want to sound heartless, but I felt cornered. I understand, but this is our home too. We're supposed to make these decisions together. He gave me a tired look. I thought you'd understand. The sting of those words cut deep. Kevin, that's not fair. I'm trying to understand, but you can't expect me to accept this without talking about it. He shrugged again, as if that single gesture could dissolve my frustration. Look, just give it time. She won't be a problem. I glared at him, unable to fathom his nonchalance. Won't be a problem. She's already taken over the living room. Kevin threw his hands up in surrender. I can't throw her out, Elena. That's all I'm saying. With that, he walked back inside, leaving me fuming in the backyard. The sinking realization dawned on me. My voice didn't matter. Kevin had made up his mind, and Lorraine had dug her heels in. As I stood there, I took a deep breath, my determination solidifying. I would not let this go uncontested. Stepping back inside, I shot a glare at Lorraine. She met my eyes with a cold smile. This is not over, I whispered, mainly to myself. The house, my sanctuary, had become a battleground, and the war had just begun. I can't believe this is happening, I muttered to myself as I left for work the next morning. My best friend Sandra called just as I pulled into the parking lot. Elena, how was your trip? She asked cheerfully. It was fine, but I came back to a nightmare. What do you mean? Her voice grew serious. Kevin's mom moved in, just like that. No discussion, no warning, I said, biting back my frustration. Sandra sighed. You've got to be kidding me. Didn't he even talk to you about it? Nope, it was all decided while I was gone. Sandra was quiet for a moment. You need to lay down some boundaries, Elena. This isn't okay. I know, I said, parking the car and grabbing my bag. It's just complicated. I get it. Just remember, you don't have to put up with this forever, she said, trying to reassure me. Entering the office, I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting back home. Memories flooded in about when Kevin and I first met at this very office. Kevin, the charming graphic designer, always had a way of making everyone laugh. Our romance had been quick and intense. We married after just a year of dating, certain we could handle anything together. Then Lorraine revealed her true colors. Sweet and supportive before the wedding, she turned critical and manipulative once the rings were on our fingers. Kevin, forever the peacemaker, never stood up to her. I'll never forget the first time she openly disapproved of me. Are you sure you can handle Kevin's work hours, Elena? Maybe you should rethink this career of yours, she said, smirking as if she was genuinely concerned. Of course, Kevin and I manage just fine, I had replied, masking my irritation. Kevin had shrugged the comment off, claiming she meant no harm, but the seeds of doubt she planted grew each day. Returning home that evening, I found Lorraine rearranging the kitchen. What are you doing? I couldn't hide my annoyance. Just making it more practical. You had it all wrong, she replied nonchalantly. I clenched my jaw, taking a deep breath. I like it the way it is. Lorraine's voice dripped with false sweetness. Oh, sweetie, you'll see it's better this way. Stepping into the living room, I saw Kevin on his laptop. Kevin, we need to talk, now. He looked up, clearly sensing the tension. What is it? Lorraine is taking over the house. We need to set some boundaries. Kevin sighed, rubbing his temples. Elena, can't you just try and get along with her? It's hard for her, too. I stared at him in disbelief. Are you kidding me? She's acting like this place is hers. She's just trying to help, he replied weakly. Help? By undermining everything I do? I snapped. Kevin stood up, frustration lining his face. Why do you always have to blow things out of proportion? Rare anger bubbled inside me. Blow things out of proportion? You're seriously siding with her? He threw his hands up. I'm not taking sides, I just want some peace. Furious, I stormed out to the backyard. My home felt like a stranger's house, my voice unheard, my feelings disregarded. But I knew deep down this wasn't living. As the night fell, I steeled myself. This wouldn't be swept under the rug. Something had to change, and I would make sure of it. Kevin's passive nature had pushed me to the edge, but I wouldn't fall off. Not yet. Not without a fight. The days blurred into a nightmare. I barely recognized my own house. Lorraine's presence was overpowering. She critiqued everything I did, from how I cooked to how I decorated. Kevin stayed silent through it all, brushing off my concerns like dust on a shelf. One morning, as I sipped my coffee, Lorraine strutted into the kitchen. Elena, I noticed you've been spending a lot on groceries. Maybe you should cut back a bit. I stared at her, biting my tongue until it nearly bled. Lorraine, we buy what we need. She smirked, shaking her head. I'd manage this household differently, but I guess it's your call. Just as I opened my mouth to retort, Kevin walked in. I turned to him. Kevin, do you hear this? He looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. Mom's just trying to help. I slammed my cup down, coffee spilling. Trying to help by undermining me? Kevin sighed, the lines on his face deepening. Why do you always have to make a scene? Lorraine's eyes twinkled with satisfaction. She had him wrapped around her finger. Frustrated, I stormed out of the kitchen. The next day, while I was at work, I got a text from Kevin. We need to talk tonight. Anxiety gnawed at me. When I got home, Lorraine's smug glance followed me as I walked into the living room. Kevin was sitting there, looking stern. Elena, Mom needs money. I've already given her some, but she needs more. My jaw dropped. She needs more. We have bills, Kevin. He rubbed his forehead. I know, but she's family. She's in a tough spot. I turned to Lorraine, who was lounging on the couch, looking unbothered. Can't she find a job or? Lorraine cut me off. I've done my fair share of work. It's time for my son to take care of me. My patience snapped. Kevin, this is not right or fair. You're putting our future at risk. Kevin's face turned red. She's my mother, Elena. She comes first. Tears stung my eyes as I realized where his loyalty lay. What about us, Kevin? What about our life? He stood up, clenching his fists. Maybe you should think about being more supportive. I left the living room, heart pounding with anger and betrayal. The conversation kept replaying in my mind. Kevin's unwavering support for Lorraine and his blatant disregard for our needs. Sandra called that evening. How are you holding up? Not well, I admitted. Lorraine wants money now, and Kevin's ready to give it to her. Sandra's voice brimmed with outrage. That's insane. You need to put your foot down, Elena. It's not that easy, I sighed. He won't listen to me. Then make him listen. You can't keep sacrificing your happiness. Her words echoed in my mind long after we hung up. The next morning I confronted Kevin again. We need to talk about finances. This has to stop. Kevin rolled his eyes. We'll be fine. Desperation gripped me. Kevin, you're jeopardizing everything we've worked for. He shrugged. She's family. You're the one being unreasonable. Anger surged through me. This is my home too. I will not be pushed aside. Walking away from that conversation, I knew things had to change. I couldn't let Lorraine dictate our lives. And if Kevin refused to stand by me, I'd find a way to reclaim my power, no matter the cost. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully ours. The escalation had only just begun. I came home late from work one evening, hoping for some semblance of peace. Instead, I walked into Lorraine and Kevin in the middle of a heated discussion. It's not done right, Kevin, Lorraine was saying. Elena doesn't know how to manage this house properly. Kevin looked up as I entered, his expression shifting from annoyance to exasperation. Mom thinks the house isn't clean enough, he said, as if that were the biggest problem we had. Lorraine turned to me, hands on her hips. Elena, couldn't you at least try to keep this place decent? I dropped my bag on the floor, barely containing my fury. I have a full-time job, Lorraine. I can't spend every minute cleaning. Lorraine huffed. When I was your age, I managed just fine. That was the last straw. This isn't about cleaning. You just want to control everything. Kevin stepped between us, his voice rising. Elena, calm down. Mom's just trying to help. Help? By criticizing everything I do? This is my home, Kevin. Our home. Lorraine scoffed. You're overreacting. Maybe if you learned some respect. Before she could finish, I cut her off. Respect? You moved in unannounced, rearranged my kitchen, demanded money, and now you're criticizing how I maintain my home. How is that respectful? Kevin's face turned red with frustration. Elena, why can't you see that she's just looking out for us? I could have screamed from the hopelessness of it all. Looking out for us? She's making me feel like a guest in my own house. Lorraine threw her hands in the air. If you're that unhappy, maybe you should leave. I stared at her, stunned. Turning to Kevin, I waited for him to defend me, but he remained silent. My heart sank. Is that what you want too, Kevin? For me to leave? He avoided my gaze, his silence louder than any words. Tears threatened, but I held them back. Fine, if you want me to leave, just say it. Kevin finally spoke, but his words hit like a brick. Maybe you need to learn some respect for family, or leave if you can't handle basic family expectations. The air was thick with tension as I turned on my heel and stormed out of the house. I needed space, air, anything but the walls that felt like they were closing in on me. Sandra's comforting voice was the only thing that made sense as I paced outside, phone pressed to my ear. He actually said that? She gasped. Yes, basically told me to leave, I whispered, the hurt palpable. Elena, you deserve better than this. If he won't see that, then maybe it's time to rethink things. Her words rang true, but they also scared me. Could I really walk away from 10 years with Kevin, from the home we built? When I finally came back inside, Kevin and Lorraine's voices could still be heard, low and conspiratorial. They didn't notice me slip upstairs, my mind swirling with conflicting thoughts. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. I knew I couldn't go on like this. Kevin's spinelessness and Lorraine's incessant meddling were driving me to the edge. Sleep didn't come easily that night, but as exhaustion finally took over, one thing was clear. I needed to stand up for myself. I couldn't let them trample over my life without consequence. The battle wasn't just Lorraine's intrusion, it was about reclaiming my own dignity and worth. Morning broke with a sense of grim determination. I had a conference trip coming up, and it felt like the last chance to find some perspective. Kevin was already at the kitchen table when I came downstairs. We need to talk, he said, as if last night hadn't been a breaking point. Not now, Kevin. I've got a plane to catch, I said, moving past him. He grabbed my arm gently. We'll work this out, I promise. I looked at him, searching for sincerity. We'll see about that. As I left the house, the weight of the impending decisions hung heavy, but I knew one thing for sure. Change was coming, one way or another. The conference trip was a welcome escape. For a few days I immersed myself in work, trying to forget about the chaos at home. But as soon as I landed back at the airport, reality crashed back in. I got a text from Kevin. We need to talk when you get home. Dread settled in my stomach as I walked through the door. Lorraine was in the kitchen, moving pots and pans around as if she could further assert her control over our space. Welcome back, Lorraine said with a smirk. Did you enjoy your trip? Spare me, I muttered, too tired to engage. Kevin was pacing in the living room. When he saw me, he stopped. We need to talk now, Elena. I dropped my bags. Fine, talk. He glanced uneasily at Lorraine before speaking. Mom and I have been discussing our situation. We think you need to make some changes. Changes? I crossed my arms, ready for the next blow. Lorraine interjected. You need to learn to respect family, and clearly, you're struggling with that. I felt like I was being gaslit. Respect goes both ways, Lorraine. You've done nothing but disrespect me since you got here. Kevin stepped in defensively. Mom's just trying to help us make this work. I couldn't hold back anymore. Kevin, are you even listening to yourself? She's tearing us apart. Lorraine put on her most innocent face. Oh, please, you're just blowing things out of proportion. I snapped. You're manipulating Kevin and trying to control our lives. What exactly is your endgame here? Kevin's face turned pale. Elena, stop. We're supposed to be a family. A family that respects each other, I shot back. And right now I feel like I've been completely disrespected and disregarded. Kevin's face contorted with frustration. Maybe you need to spend some time away to clear your head. I was stunned. Do you even hear what you're saying? You want me to leave my own home? Lorraine smirked, clearly enjoying the show. Maybe a little time apart would do you both some good. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Kevin broke it. Maybe she's right. I think it's best if you take some time to cool off. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of betrayal. If I leave, I'm not coming back until things change. Kevin looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Do what you need to do, Elena. I turned, grabbing my bags, and walked out the door. It wasn't until I was outside that the tears came. As heart-wrenching as it was also liberating. For too long I had tolerated being second to Lorraine's manipulations. Sandra was at her door before I even rang the bell. Elena, what's happened now? Kevin wants me to leave, I managed between sobs. He sided with Lorraine again. Sandra pulled me into a comforting hug. You've done the right thing. You deserve better. As days turned into a week, I settled into Sandra's spare bedroom. The sting of Kevin's betrayal was sharp, but the time away also gave me clarity. I began consulting with Mark, a trusted lawyer, discussing my options. During one of our meetings, Mark looked up from his papers. You know, Elena, the house is legally yours. I blinked, processing his words. What do you mean? Kevin never updated the deed after you purchased it. Legally, you hold the title. A spark of hope flickered. So I could. Yes, Mark confirmed. You have the power here. Use it wisely. Armed with this knowledge, I prepared for the next battle. Kevin and Lorraine needed a wake-up call, and I was more than ready to give it to them. My time of feeling powerless was over. It was time to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I returned home with a resolve I hadn't felt in years. As I walked through the front door, the silence struck me. It was clear Lorraine and Kevin knew something was up. I found them both in the living room, Kevin on the couch, Lorraine in the armchair. Both turned to face me as I entered. Kevin spoke first, his voice betraying his nervousness. Elena, where have you been? I didn't waste any time. Kevin, Lorraine, sit down. We need to talk. Lorraine's eyes narrowed. About what? Think you can come in here and start making demands? I ignored her, focusing on Kevin. This ends now, Kevin. Lorraine's constant meddling, the financial drain, everything. Kevin's brows furrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying this situation is unbearable. Lorraine's presence and your constant support of her over our marriage is unacceptable. Lorraine stood up, her face a mask of feigned innocence. Oh, I see. So now it's all my fault? Every part of it, I stated bluntly. I've tried to be reasonable, but you've taken over our home, criticized me constantly, and pushed me to the breaking point. Kevin sighed deeply. Elena, we've been over this. She's family. I took a deep breath. Well, here's the thing, Kevin. The house is in my name. Legally, I own this place. Both Kevin and Lorraine froze, their faces pale. What? Kevin muttered, disbelief painting his features. You heard me, and with that, I have the final say on who stays and who goes. Lorraine scoffed, trying to regain her composure. You wouldn't dare. I looked straight at Kevin. If you want to stay in this marriage, Lorraine needs to go. Now. Kevin stammered. Elena, you can't just... Yes, I can, I interrupted. This is my home, and I'm done being pushed around. Lorraine's eyes were on fire. You ungrateful little... Enough, I shouted. Leave, now. Kevin stood up, trying to placate. Elena, can't we discuss this? No, Kevin. I have tried to discuss, to compromise, but you both have taken advantage of my patience. He glanced at his mother, despair clouding his eyes. Mom, maybe it's best if you find somewhere else to stay for a while. Lorraine's face twisted in rage. What? You're kicking me out? Kevin looked down, avoiding her gaze. Maybe just for a little while, until things calm down. She turned to me, venom in her voice. You'll regret this. I met her look with defiance. No, Lorraine, I think this is exactly what I need to do. Kevin's shoulders slumped as Lorraine stormed off to pack her things. He finally looked at me, desperation in his eyes. Elena, I cut him off. Kevin, I love you, but your blind allegiance to your mother has pushed us to this breaking point. Things need to change or we're over. Lorraine brushed past us with her bags, shooting daggers with her eyes. This isn't the end, Elena. Remember that. I didn't flinch. Goodbye, Lorraine. After she slammed the door, the house fell into an eerie silence. Kevin and I stood there, the distance between us growing. This wasn't going to be fixed overnight. If Kevin couldn't adjust, I knew I'd have to walk away for good. For now, though, a heavy weight lifted from my shoulders. The battle wasn't completely won, but the most reinforcing battle had been, and I felt stronger for it. The next steps were uncertain, but I was ready to face them head-on. Kevin was unusually quiet in the days following Lorraine's departure. Tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. His silence was heavy, his movements slow, and it was clear he was struggling to process everything. One evening, while we were having dinner, he finally spoke up. Elena, I never wanted it to get this bad. I looked at him, wanting to believe there was genuine regret. Kevin, it's not just about wanting or not wanting. It's about actions and consequences. You've allowed your mother to disrespect me for years. He sighed, pushing his food around on his plate. I know, but I didn't know how to stop her. By standing up to her, Kevin, by putting our marriage first, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. You're right, he admitted, sadly. I've been a coward. The admission felt like a small victory, but I wasn't about to let him off easy. Kevin, I need you to understand that things have to change. If they don't, we won't survive this. He looked up, his eyes pleading. I'll do whatever it takes, Elena. Just tell me what to do. I took a deep breath. We need professional help, counseling, and you need to rebuild the trust that's been shattered. Kevin nodded, slowly. I'll make an appointment tomorrow. The next few days were filled with cold, practical coexistence. We barely spoke outside of necessity. I needed space to heal, and Kevin seemed to need time to regain his footing. Then, another bombshell hit. Lorraine started calling, leaving messages. Kevin ignored them at first, but one evening he played them all at once, his face pale. Lorraine's voice was shrill and desperate. Kevin, I need you to come here. Things are bad. I don't know what to do. Kevin turned to me, eyes wide with helplessness. She's in trouble, Elena? I crossed my arms, feeling my resolve harden. She's been in trouble of her own making. She dug this hole, Kevin. I know, but she's still my mother, he said, his voice shaking. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar sting of frustration. If you go to her now, Kevin, you're undoing any progress we've made. He froze, torn between guilt and duty. But if I don't go, what kind of son am I? One who finally sets boundaries. One who respects his wife, I replied. Kevin's shoulders drooped. What do you want me to do? This is a test for you, Kevin. You need to choose us. If you don't, I'll know where we stand, I said, each word a heavy verdict. Kevin slowly nodded. All right, I won't go. The next day I consulted Mark again, finalizing some practical matters regarding the house. When I returned home, Kevin was waiting. I didn't respond to her, he said quietly, just like you asked. A small part of me felt relief. That's a start, Kevin. And I made an appointment with the counselor for both of us, he added. I nodded, feeling cautiously optimistic. Good, we need this. Later, as we sat silently in the living room, Kevin finally broke the quiet. I regret everything, Elena. Letting her come between us was the worst mistake of my life. I looked at him, sensing some genuine change. This is your chance to prove it. He reached out, taking my hand. I promise, Elena, I'll do better. As the days turned into weeks, we attended counseling sessions, slowly working through years of built-up resentment and betrayal. It wasn't easy, and I wasn't sure if Kevin and I would fully recover, but for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that Lorraine wasn't done with her schemes, and I remained vigilant, ready for whatever her next move would be. This battle wasn't over, but I was no longer willing to be a passive participant in my own life. I was prepared to fight for my happiness, no matter the cost. The decision to move out temporarily was my last resort. Kevin and I had made progress in counseling, but I needed a fresh start to clear my mind and regain control. I found a small, furnished apartment a few blocks away, allowing me to maintain some distance while still keeping an eye on the home front. The day I left, Kevin looked distraught. Elena, I understand why you need to do this, but it feels so final. It's not forever, Kevin. It's just for now, I said, mustering as much reassurance as I could. I need space to heal. He nodded, but his eyes were filled with worry. I'll be here when you're ready. As I settled into my new place, I threw myself into work, excelling at the marketing firm and networking with new clients. One evening, I received a call from Nathan Parker, an old friend who had just launched a startup. Elena, I've been following your career for a while now. I'd love for you to join my team, he said enthusiastically. Excitement bubbled up. That sounds amazing, Nathan. Let's meet and discuss it further. Meanwhile, Lorraine's life was unraveling. Rumors reached me through mutual acquaintances. She and Kevin had been forced to move into a rundown apartment, their finances in tatters without my contributions. It seemed karma was catching up to her. Several weeks passed before Kevin called. Elena, can we meet? I need to talk to you. We met at a small cafe. Kevin looked worn out but sincere. I've missed you. The house feels empty without you. I've missed you too, I admitted, though cautiously. But have things changed? He sighed deeply. Lorraine's in over her head. She's been manipulating me for so long, and I finally see it. I've made arrangements for her to move in with a relative out of state. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Yes, he confirmed. I want to make things right, Elena. I want us to be happy again. A part of me felt relief, but I also knew I had to protect my heart. Kevin, it'll take time for me to believe things have truly changed. He nodded, understandingly. I'm willing to wait. As I walked back to my apartment, I mulled over our conversation. Was it possible Kevin had really changed? Only time would tell. The next day, I met with Nathan. The startup's energy was infectious, and I accepted his offer to join the team as their head of marketing. It was a fresh, exciting challenge and a chance to build something new. Months flew by. Work was fulfilling, and Kevin and I maintained cautious communication. Finally, one afternoon, I received the news I'd been expecting. Lorraine had moved out of state. Kevin called me later, his voice hopeful. The house is ours again, Elena? Can we start over? I hesitated a moment before answering. Yes, Kevin. We can give it another try. Moving back into the house felt surreal. It was as if a dark cloud had lifted, and the space was filled with possibilities once more. Kevin worked hard to rebuild trust, and the counseling sessions became a solid foundation for our new beginning. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Kevin turned to me. Thank you for giving us another chance, Elena. I won't let you down. Looking at him, I saw a genuine change and commitment in his eyes. I believe you, Kevin. Let's make the most of this. Life gradually became stable and fulfilling again. My career at Nathan's startup soared, and Kevin and I rediscovered our love and partnership. Lorraine's absence was a blessing that allowed us to focus on us without the constant undercurrent of manipulation. Occasionally, I'd hear whispers about Lorraine struggling in her new living situation. She had burned many bridges and found herself isolated and vulnerable. It may have been karma's way of balancing the scales. As time went on, Kevin and I thrived, stronger and more resilient than ever. The journey had been long and painful, but the light at the end was worth the battle. Now our lives felt rooted in mutual respect and genuine love, standing tall amidst the trials we'd conquered together.